So I want to, if you excuse me, I will sit down so you can see the slides. I'm going to introduce the Youth Looking Beyond Disaster and some of the work that we're doing. It's a great pleasure to be back in Istanbul and to meet dear friends that I actually have met in my life trajectory some years ago. And now we are reconnecting, which is wonderful. In my home country, Aotearoa, New Zealand, we say kia ora. Kia ora. Kia ora? Kia ora. Thank you. First word of Maori. Welcome. I want to talk about the origins, achievements, and future of Youth Looking Beyond Disaster. I'm the president of the American University of Sovereign Nations and the director of the Bias Ethics Institute in New Zealand, Japan, and Thailand. We've had now 10 Youth Looking Beyond Disaster forums. The first was in my hometown, in Christchurch, New Zealand, in response to the earthquake in 2011. The second was in Sendai, Japan, in 2012, in response to the earthquake and tsunami. The third was in Kobe, 2013. Then in Manila, hosted by Professor Maron Lafrido, is here, in 2014. Then in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, under the shadow of a volcano. That's a volcanic disaster. Manila has many events of nature, typhoons, is one of them flooding. We had in Arizona, fires, in Kathmandu, in response to earthquakes, in Bangkok, in response to floods and many other issues, in Kumamoto, in response to an earthquake, in Istanbul, hopefully not in disasters during our meetings. We'll see what happens. So this is, in history, however, we can see disasters affect countries, and we need to prepare for these events through disaster resilience. Bioethics is a subject which we've heard about in the introduction, and it is a common foundation for our work. New technology has been a catalyst for re-examination of medical ethics and social ethics and international dialogue on ethical principles. So we have fields like medical ethics, dental ethics, environmental ethics, public health ethics, applied ethics, ethics of biotechnology. We have common challenges to govern advanced technology. We have common needs to meet the basic health and social needs of persons in all cultures. We constructed life in vitro, in glass, and how do we manipulate it? Curing disease is an act of love. So the genetic lottery that we're born with presents parents and society ethical dilemmas. It's in addition to the social and spiritual lotteries that we're born with. Both unconditional acceptance of a living being with love and attempting to cure disease are acts of love. Should pursuit of happiness ever be made illegal? This is an example of a question of bioethics. The Bangkok Statement on Human Gene Editing and Human Genetic Engineering in February 2019 is a statement which looks at the questions of whether we should control the use of technology. And we had participants from Australia, Bangladesh, Belgium, Brazil, Canada, Chile, China, Congo, Ethiopia, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Iran, Israel, Japan, Micronesia, Mozambique, New Zealand, Nigeria, Pakistan, Philippines, Spain, Tanzania, Thailand, UK, United States of America, and Vietnam. These are only a small fraction of the 200 recognized nations of the world, the 4,000 sovereign nations of the world, and many other peoples and groups around the world. How do we work together to regulate science and technology? So that's one of the big questions. Disaster ethics. Events such as major disasters are catalysts for re-examination of applied ethics and social ethics and international dialogue on ethical principles. They usually present challenges of bioethics, public health, and environmental ethics. We have fields such as engineering ethics, medical ethics, risk assessment, analysis, public health ethics, public policy ethics, environmental ethics, representation, community engagement, architectural ethics, many areas that you may be involved in. This is a picture of a tsunami warning stone intended to be an open data. Do you know that as a 5-year-old child, the first Japanese word I learned was tsunami? Because my hometown, Christchurch, New Zealand, had a beach and sometimes had received small tsunamis. Our neighbour in Christchurch, when we look out from the beach, is Chile. Chile is the other side of the Pacific Ocean, and some tsunamis go across the Pacific 12,000 kilometers. And in fact, in the earthquake from Chile in the South Pacific, it killed people in Japan in the North Pacific after the tsunami traveled 15,000 kilometers around the world. Very interesting that this idea of a big wave. So in Japan it was quite common to have a tsunami, and they built the stone on most of these, about 300 of these stones around Japan still. They normally say a big wave came, a tsunami came, many people died, so don't build below the stone. So it's a public health warning system. On the side of a hill, we have a valley, and every 60 years in northeastern Japan you have a tsunami, often 15 or 20 meter tsunami. I don't know how high you are above sea level here, but 15 to 20 meters is quite high. And it was a good advice, don't build below the stone. But what do people do? Guess what they did? After 10 years or so, they forget the tsunami and they say, you know, it's much easier to live on a flat area next to the ocean. So we're going to rebuild and settle down here. And what grandmas in Japan teach their children, there's only one thing to do when a tsunami comes. So the grandma will tell the child, and they teach them one word: run. And don't stop for the old people. You have to say goodbye and run. You have to go. You have to know the high place. So in the great northeastern Japan earthquake in 2011, some students in the school, their school was 2 stories high. So they followed the advice of the teacher after the big earthquake: please go to the roof of the school. But it's 2 stories high. How high is 2 stories? It's about 7 meters, 8 meters. So what happens when a 15-meter tsunami comes to an 8-meter building? When you have a 4 or 5-story school building, it's high enough. So in those schools, when the kids go to the roof of the building, and you may think, it's strange to have an access point to the roof of the building, but when you live in a tsunami zone, this is your public safety measure. You have access to the roof, and the roof on a concrete building is your escape zone. Okay. So this is disaster resilience. This is a Japanese farmer next to the farms in Fukushima in Japan. Actually, I have a house in south of Fukushima. This is not my farm. Okay. But I visited farms. There's an exclusion zone after the nuclear meltdowns in 3 reactors. So when you have a nuclear power station and you have a warning that it could be a 15-meter tsunami, you need to build a sea wall that's prepared for a 15-meter tsunami. They only prepared a wall for a 6-meter tsunami. So we had meltdowns and a lot of contaminations. So it costs more money. There was actually a very crazy city mayor in northeastern Japan, and people considered he's a crazy mayor. Now I know in your city right now you have a discussion on who will be the new mayor of Istanbul. Very big issue. In this little town in northeastern Japan, this crazy mayor said, I'm going to spend the money and build a 15-meter seawall on the front of our village, of our town. So he passed away, but 10 years later, when the tsunami came, it's the only town that was not washed away. So people go to the shrine and say, thank you very much for your wisdom. And because somebody listened to the tradition. So disaster resilience is important. This is a building close to where we are in Arizona. It's Casa Grande. It's a skyscraper built 800 years ago, a 4-story building. And what's most interesting for me in this building is there are 2 markers for solstices. You know, solstice is discovered by all ancient people who have agriculture. You need to know the equinox, you need to know the longest day, the shortest day, because you need to grow food. If you don't grow food, you die. But in the desert, there's another very important solstice, the lunar solstice. It's every 18.6 years. The lunar solstice is linked to the groundwater level, because every 18.6 years there'll be a couple of years of low groundwater because of the alignment of the planets and the moon. And so for those 2 years you need to store more grain, more food, because there'll be less water, there'll be a drought. So that's a very interesting astronomical knowledge, because the average life expectancy 800 years ago is not very high. That you need to have astronomers in your community who can measure the lunar solstice at a cycle of 18.6 years. Because you can do that, you can survive. So that's fascinating. So when we look at ancient universities around the world, okay, there are many, because most needed to know astronomy to prevent disasters such as starvation and drought. It's a friendly earth god for you. Historical evidence. There are challenges of applying historical evidence in contemporary discourse. Not least of these is the changing patterns of historical analysis that writers often use to selectively quote examples that support their present-day examples and arguments. I'm sure you're used to this. Politicians do it all the time. And many professors do it all the time too. Although there are important methodological differences between the philosophical discourse and religions, discussion of ethical values is common in religious scriptures. And some form of earth god is seen in many cultures. We pray to the earth. Thank you for our food. We pray to the sun. I pray to the rising sun every morning. Thank you. Because it's a very obvious thing to thank. Will the sun have come out today? Yesterday I saw the sunrise. It's beautiful. Today I'm not sure. Knowledge may help us develop sustainable food choices and agricultural practices. We love fish, but most fish species are now being depleted because the commons, the oceans, it's a free lunch for everybody. Is that right? You take your boat and you can have a free fish. But actually, if you take too much fish, you have none left for tomorrow. We have a right to own a house, own property. But what sort of house do you live? Well, this house may look very poor, but if it's a heavy earthquake, probably a very safe house.
Yeah.
Okay. More safe than a concrete apartment block.
Yeah.
But if it's in a typhoon or a hurricane, this is not a safe house. So unfortunately for these people, their disaster is not an earthquake, but typhoons and cyclones. We have action plans from the Youth Looking Beyond Disaster forums on the website, and tomorrow afternoon I invite everybody, including our second floor, to present the action plans of what you could do to prepare your community against disasters. It might be to clean the rubbish. It might be to rebuild the whole world. It could be anything in between. Okay. There are four conceptual pillars of the term human security have evolved in scientific political debate. Freedom from fear, freedom from want, freedom to live with dignity, and freedom from hazard impacts. These are a simplified form of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that people should have these freedoms as part of dignity. Confucius, who's one of our teachers in the past, said to love a thing means wanting it to live. Do you love life? Do you love people?
Yeah.
So, therefore, we need to prepare. Protecting the dignity of people is a universally agreed goal of the United Nations. We have many challenges, be they gender equality, ageism, discrimination, or development of informed societies. I'm sure as a child you've memorized the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Am I right? You should teach your children to memorize this. The first article is very deliberate and very powerful. It's for me the basis of most of the activity I do. All peoples have the right to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. And some of you, English is the second language, or fifth language, who knows? So you may think, why does it say peoples with an S? But this is on purpose. In 1945, how many countries were there in the world? About 50, because most were colonies and not countries. How many countries are there today? around 200. How many peoples? Well, still 5 or 6,000. By the end of the 21st century, how many countries will there be? Well, the trend will continue that recognition of communities and sovereignty will be extended. So we'll, I don't know, if we're lucky, 500. I want to ask our dear colleague Raquel from the United States, how many states are there in the United States? How many states are there in the United States?
At the present time?
Yes, at the present time. Sorry?
51.
51. What's the 51st state? Okay. Does anybody have a different answer?
Yes. And if you look into peoples, then you think of the red Indians, you think of other people, rather than the political boundaries.
There you go. She's listened to an election and she passes. Okay, so federally recognized states in the United States, there are 50 states and there are 566 federally recognized sovereign nations. So the correct answer is 616 states in the United States. Federally recognized at the moment. Because if we combine sovereign nation as a state and the American concept of a state, then we have 50 plus 566. But of course there are some sovereign nations who are not recognized by the federal government. And you also mentioned places like Puerto Rico, which are territories which are already states, or the Marshall Islands are their states. In India, there are 326 formally recognized tribal peoples that Indian government fights very strongly to declare there is only one Indian nation. They already had to give up after the breakup. They had to give up Pakistan, Bangladesh, and some other places that are contested. The People's Republic of China has around 50 ethnic groups, and there's some places which are contested. That they also want to say there is one state, and they also want to include some other places which people in those places are very strongly opposed to. So the concept of a nation and a state is interesting. So the United Nations in its wisdom, sometimes it's wise, all peoples, because it doesn't matter if you're a nation or what political affiliation your government has, you're a people, a person. So that's the reason for this, self-determination. The Universal Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights has a common agreement on principles of bioethics between all peoples, and not all people were consulted on this. So some peoples were questioning. That these provide a framework for us to discuss. So there is a principle of solidarity, there is a principle of vulnerability. We can discuss how we implement it, but these are common. What you can do to save the world, there's so many opportunities to ask questions, and I welcome the new youngster who wants to join the PhD program. Thank you, sir. Okay? Thank you. Young man, thank you. So, young people, who do you define youth? Could all the young people stand up in the room? Young people, stand up. Stand
Age is only a number.
For some of us, it may depend on the day. Sometimes you feel a bit wary and not so happy. So youth is in your heart. So there's no excuse for not making a youth looking beyond disaster action plan based on your age in your passport or in your number of previous lives. Who knows how old you are, really? We have many opportunities to ask questions. The biggest question you need to ask is, what future do you want? Do you ask this question? Or did you stop asking it when you left primary school? And you just gave up? And you just followed the flows of companies, of governments, of short-term economic politics, and you just follow. So my future is not determined by me, but by somebody else. Okay. What did a number of our teachers say? Gandhi said, be the change that you would want in the world.
What did Doris Day say?
Doris Day? What did she say? I don't know.
What will be, will be.
Yes, and so we have a dilemma here. Active participation or just let things be as they may be. So maybe some part of both is okay, but I believe you should ask this question and it's your responsibility to answer it. Study hard, find your identity, acquire skills to make important changes in the world. If you're still interested in finding your identity, ask questions. Work together with other persons to build a multitasking and multi-skilled team. We have different people here. Some people are good at one thing, and some people are good at another. Some are artists, some are musicians, some are singers, some are mathematicians, some are philosophers, some are lazy, and some are hardworking. Some people are early birds, and some people like to sleep in. Yeah. That's good. Build a team. Self-evaluation on the success of programs and lessons to learn for future action plans. So, evaluate yourself. How can you do better? Be positive. Okay? This room has a lot of natural energy from the floor. It's a wood. We can get energy in many ways, but it's much easier from the wood, the energy flowing, the energy of people, the positive vibrations. Yes? So think and use the opportunity to be positive, even if disasters are tragedies, even if the topic of bioethics is very serious. Educate others by peer education in our community. This is a group of young people that gathered in San Carlos Apache Tribal Nation for a Youth Looking Beyond Disaster event. Professors Angelica and Ananya were there. This is Chief Wanzanozi, Raquel was there. So 3 young professors were in there. So if you come back to you, and maybe this is a very interesting. We have the concept both of natural disasters, but man-made disasters. So San Carlos is the site of a concentration camp where 40,000 Apaches were exterminated, and then a dam was built to flood the remains of the camp. It was at the time the world's largest concrete dam. The Coolidge Dam was established in 1927 to be a wonderful achievement of technology. At the time, it was the world's largest concrete dam. It flooded the remains of the concentration camp for the Native Americans. Okay. So they keep that. Interesting. That we have to think about these events. I established with a colleague at American University Sovereign Nations 6 years ago. We have 7 master's programs and a PhD program, and some of you are our dean students. Everyone at every age, of any discipline, from any background, whether you went to school or did not go to school, you are welcome to join. Of course, you might have to study more if you, depending what level of your education you are. We work with collaborations with many institutions around the world because education is for all. We want to establish, or we have established, a decolonized university in every country. No student is in debt when they graduate, and global mobility. The world education system is broken. We need to reinvent this. My goals for the world are how do we form a mature society for a well-informed and balanced person. Biologically mature means a person or a society that can balance the benefits and risks of alternative options and make well-considered decisions and talk about it. Why do we think talking about it is important? Well, we saw in the introduction, you've hosted some wonderful thinkers, such as John Harris. Sometimes they say very interesting things to make people think. That sometimes people in power say, you can't talk about eugenics, you can't talk about abortion, you can't talk about genocide, you can't talk about racism, you can't talk about colonization. But actually, a mature society can talk about everything. And we have to. Even things which we disagree with. We are thinkers. If we don't think and ask questions, our world has no future. We can embrace many values, but the value of pursuit of greater wisdom for a better future is one that has brought us together in the pursuit of wisdom. This is a photograph of some of my students enjoying a sunny day in the Philippines. It is true. Please look carefully at the photograph.
Yeah.
Where are the students?
There in the front.
In front or behind? Okay, they're both the front and behind. Yes. So please enjoy the reflection, and if you want more information, we have it on the website, also on YouTube, and I'd like to thank again Peter for hosting us, and I would like to invite us to present the next, go to the next paper. We have a lot of speakers, and I think we're going to learn a lot from each other. Thank you so much.